On another issue, do you have any thoughts concerning the cancellation of International Dra Mohamed Day on Parliament Hill? I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but the idea was to invite anybody onto the Hill today to draw pictures of any political or religious figure that they want in order to celebrate freedom of speech. Approvals to hold the event were granted, a permit was issued. But at about 5:25 last night, organizers were informed that permission to hold the event had been canceled for, quote, security reasons. According to organizers, someone named Joel Girard, who canceled the permit, refused to elaborate on what the security concerns were. I don't know about you, but I find this kind of thing very disturbing. Very definite attack on freedom of speech. I mean, do we have freedom of speech in this country or do we not? Of this you can be sure. If this was supposed to be International Draw Jesus Day, it would not have been canceled. Nor, I suspect, if it was supposed to have been International Draw Buddha Day. I know we don't get very many calls these days concerning serious issues, but the topic is out there on the table for discussion, folks, and the lines are all available. 521-8255. Linda, you're on CFRA.
Yes, good morning.
Yes.
Yes, I'd like to say that the freedom of speech, I believe that it's deteriorating in this country at a rapid speed, and there's no reason on this earth why they should not have that demonstration in Ottawa with drawing whoever they want to draw. But that shows you that they're just buckling into whatever fears they have. And that's a bad sign, because then you got nobody with backbone willing to help the country.
Yeah, it was supposed to have been International Draw Mohamed Day today, but the organizers said you could come to Parliament Hill. It was to be a very respectful thing. You could draw a picture of any religious or political figure that you want, just to express freedom of speech. They were granted a permit, in other words, permission to use the Hill today. 5:25 last night, they are phoned and told, no, I'm sorry, we've canceled the permit. There's a security reason.
Well, they should show up anyways.
Thank you for the call. We'll be back, CFRA. Any thoughts concerning the fact that today was supposed to be Dra Mohamed Day on Parliament Hill? This was a day when people were invited to come onto Parliament Hill and in a very respectful way draw a picture of any politician or religious leader that they want, just to show that there is really freedom of speech in this country. The organizers were granted permission. They were given a permit. At 5:25 last night, the organizers received a phone call from someone saying that the permit had been revoked, that there were, quote, security concerns, and thus the Mohammed Day had been canceled. My suggestion is that if this had been International Draw Jesus Day or International Draw Buddha Day, there would have been no security concerns. Do we have real freedom of speech left in this country, or do we not? 521-8255. I know that it's getting very difficult to get people to comment on anything serious. So if there's anybody who has any thoughts on that. James, you're on CFRA. Good morning.
So, good morning.
Yes,
you
sir.
know, about this thing, I think this would be
About which thing, sir? I'm sorry.
About the attempt to have a freedom of speech day at Parliament Hill today, which was canceled at the virtual last minute by Heritage Canada.
Right.
I think in order to understand what happened, people have to understand Sharia law, and it's not what people think it is. They think it's who's the premier that canceled some attempt to legalize Sharia law's parallel system? Was it? It
was
the last liberal,
Dalton
McGuinty. But the thing is, that actually meant nothing, because Sharia law doesn't work that way. It's not done by an act of legislation in the Parliament. It is done by military colonists who come to an area to enforce bit by bit their norms on us through thuggery, intimidation, and terrorism. This is Sharia law. People think that we just have to not vote for it. We're okay. There's no voting involved.
So are you suggesting? Okay, but so what you suspect is that if they said there was a security concern, there must have been a threat.
Well, what else could it possibly mean? And who else would that threat be from? Because it's consistent throughout modern, actually even ancient history, that if you violate something which Muslims have laid down as being a line you cannot cross in your own home, then they'll enact a violent act to make sure that you don't do this. So this de facto Sharia. It's how it works. And then people will slowly go, well, I guess I better not do that. Now, to people who think that it's as simple as not drawing a single picture, I just think it's really important that we understand, we look at the Islamic State as being a logical endgame for this, and then you look at the UK and parts of Scandinavia and go, okay, there's a whole lot of stages in between where you start out by saying, okay, well, we won't tolerate this image. And
we're right out of time. James, let me ask you one final question. How come there's not more concern being expressed? I don't understand that. Like, we don't seem all that concerned about this.
Well, I personally think the answer to that's very simple. It's because the media is afraid to actually discuss the issue as it is. And people would be incredibly concerned if there was any truth being delivered, but it takes unbelievable amounts of study to actually figure out what's going on, because especially the CBC is in the business of whitewashing this to make it look like that Islam is really the religion of peace and everything's okay, and the real problem is right-wing extremists who we never hear from and never do anything.
You see, if I were a newspaper editor, or even editor of a television station, or even an editor here, I would immediately phone the Heritage Canada or whoever canceled this and say, okay, there's a security concern. What is the security concern? Was there a threat? To me, this is a major news story. Was there a direct threat made here? Is this why you canceled this? To me, that's a major news story, but nobody's touching it.
It is a major news story. And the same thing happened with when the Free Thinking Film Society tried to show the movie Iranium for the first time. There was a direct security threat to the Archives Canada, and it turned out, I think, to have been a state actor, to have been somebody acting for the Iranian embassy. And then, as I recall, the Canadian government intervened and made sure that this thing happened under tight security.
Anyway, we're way over time. You know what I have to say, James? I'm glad that I'm at the end of my career, sir, because I don't like the way things are going here.
Well, the rest of us need you to be like at the middle of it, because you're one of the very few voices that actually is willing to come forward, and you understand the consequences of this, and you're speaking about it. Somebody's got to do it. This is real.
Thank you for the call. We'll be back, CFRA. And what do you think about the fact that Heritage Canada, at the very last moment, canceled what was supposed to have been International Draw Mohamed Day on Parliament Hill today? This was an event, and it's been held in other locations, where people go and they are free to draw pictures of any religious or political figure that they want, just as an expression of freedom of speech. I mean, you're supposed to be able to have freedom of speech in this country. 521-8255. Russ writes, I am discouraged by the Heritage Canada decision to cancel a previously approved Draw Mohamed event. The event was to be held on Parliament Hill, home to the same organization that is sworn to uphold and defend our Constitution and embedded Charter of Rights, including the right of citizens to express their opinions freely. What are we to think when our own leaders reward those who would threaten violence and punish those who wish to exercise their citizenship rights? Time to turn this around and take to task those who would force Canadians through violence and terrorism to forego their rights, so that the thin-skinned sensibilities of thugs might be better respected. Very well done. Very well done.